The European Southern Observatory catches a cosmic spiral. SpaceX and NASA gear up for the Cape's return to crewed flight with Demo 2. And no is the answer. Questions may surprise you. It's Tuesday, May 26, 2020, day 65 of lockdown here in Australia. Let's talk some science.
Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is Talking Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
Indeed, he is with me. It is Dr. Brad Tucker. Happy Tuesday to you, Dr. Brad.
Yeah, it's a big Tuesday.
It is a big Tuesday. It's a big week for science and space news here at Talking Science. We've got so much to get into, but first of all, everyone can find you on social media, on Facebook, Dr. Brad Tucker, on Twitter, btucker22, and of course, TrekZone, all over social media as well. Brad, let's dive into the headlines. No, not a moment to waste.
Talking Science Headlines.
And the headlines for us this week start with Hayabusa 2. It's just passed 2,000 mission days.
Hard to imagine that it was launched 5 years ago or so, but after a year and a half trip to the asteroid and then hanging around the asteroid in the year, playing on the asteroid, and then a trip back, it's a long day for a spacecraft.
It is a very long day. Another one, a bright flash in the night sky over the weekend here in Australia. A lot of discussion on this one. Was it a meteorite? Was it an alien? Was it space junk? What was it, Brad?
Look, it looked strange, but it was definitely space junk. It was the third stage of a Russian Soyuz rocket, which had launched, in the evening Australia time. And I think it was a combination of, it was Friday evening at 6 p.m. Everyone was at home because of lockdown. It was clear skies. And so it was really quite the show. It's a very good thing, but it was all planned, always planned to land off the coast of Tasmania.
And our last headline, the largest antenna in the southern hemisphere is getting a makeover. Deep Space 43 at Tidbinbilla.
Yeah, it's a bit delayed for coronavirus reasons and lockdown, but they've been planning this upgrade for a long time to allow them to do the next wave of deep space communications and the new round of spacecraft. So it's going to be offline for a while, which means communication with Voyager will be a bit restricted because it's one of the few antennas that can talk to that distant craft in the edge of our solar system.
Talking Science Stories of the Week.
Now, I love this one, Brad. You sent it through. This beautiful orange cosmic swirl. Turns out it's the birth of a baby planet.
This is an actual image. This isn't an animation. This isn't a computer simulation. This is an image of a swirling ball of gas coming together to form a baby planet. And I think that's the remarkable thing here is that, we know planets form. We've long calculated and thought how the gas swirls around to form the planet. It's amazing to see that, that process happening in the here and now in the truest sense.
Absolutely incredible to think.
It almost looks like a galaxy, right? But what you're seeing is really this, planet being formed. And that's kind of the cool thing when we talk about how stars and planets and galaxies form. There's actually, a similar mechanism and process involved in it. And so it's nice to be able to see that.
Alrighty, well, let's get into our biggest story of the week. Probably our biggest story of the show, the show's history. SpaceX and NASA are gearing up for a return to crewed missions from the Cape. They're calling it Launch America. It's Demo 2 officially.
That's right. It's a big, exciting thing. And, we've talked about the steps needed in it and all the testing they've been doing and those sorts of things. And, they're definitely both groups, SpaceX as a private company to first to send humans and NASA to resume launch capability from the U.S. are both excited in this era of this happening. But as you said, importantly, called Demo 2, right? They still are doing the first, kind of the full run. They've done all the various components. Now it's the real salami, so to speak, of doing the whole thing.
Well, let's dive into today's mission. As we say, it is Demo 2, so they're demonstrating what the capabilities of this craft are. One of them, I'm pretty sure that taking 24 hours to get to the space station is not going to be the norm. It is part of this spaceworthiness flight to make sure that everything's working before they dock with a pretty expensive bit of hardware already in orbit.
That's right. I think, firstly, some people think that once you launch, it's it's, you're up there in 10 minutes and you're at the space station. It actually does take a while because once you're in orbit, you have to get into the right orbit and match your orbit. So it is longer than just the 2-hour launch or whatever. However, 24 hours is on the long side. And as you said, they'll be doing lots of checks along the way. They'll be kind of doing pauses. Once they get into orbit, they'll do a series of checks and evaluations, to move on to the next step, to make sure that if they have a flaw, they don't dock with a $150 billion shiny space station. And B, again, the reason also these astronauts were chosen is they're very experienced space shuttle pilots. And one of the points of being the space test flight is they can check not only how is it performing, but how is it performing against the space shuttle? Not that's what you should compare to, but it gives a benchmark for the need of training or evaluation or expectations. There's only so much a dummy, not in the negative sense, but when they actually sent a dummy last year, can tell you about these things. So there'll be a lot of different things they'll look at, and even when they dock to the space station, and even when they're on the space station, it won't just stop there. Their mission will be to evaluate the craft through the whole journey.
And of course, Trek Zone will be live with that launch, with your expert analysis. And Dr. Andy Thomas will be joining me as well for a bit of commentary on what it's like to be sitting on thousands of pounds of rocket fuel waiting to be launched into orbit. Of course, Dr. Andy Thomas, Australia's only astronaut so far, and he flew on 4 shuttle missions and spent over 140 days on the Mir space station. So looking forward to that. Everyone should check us out on Thursday morning. Dr. Brad Tucker. It's going to be exciting.
It will be a big one. And I think we have to just make a note. It will be a different launch experience because of coronavirus. You won't have the crowds that you would normally have. When this thing was originally being planned, Cape Canaveral, Kennedy, they launched, future rocket launches. And, you could buy tickets to the launch to be in the area. There was always a limit to saying, they were going to do a lottery and a control system because they knew this was going to be a hugely popular thing and the crowds would be enormous. That is not really possible in the current climate.
Alrighty, Brad. And our last story this week, we're going to come down from that high of a rocket launch, which is the first time we've had an American crewed rocket launch in the history of Talking Science, which is only 18 months old, but still. So coming down, and you're going to tell me no a couple of times. We've got some myths to bust. The sun is in its quietest period, and that's it. All hell's going to break loose. An ice age is coming.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. This is an easy no. It's one of those things. Yes, the sun is in a quiet period. The sun has an 11-year solar cycle. And people said, well, maybe this is associated with many ice ages or will change the temperature of the planet. It doesn't really work like that. The heat output and the energy output of the sun doesn't change. It's just the magnetic activity and the solar flares. So it's actually a good thing. There's less solar flares. That means there's less types of radiation bombarding it. There's less flares and the chance of radiation harming astronauts in space. So good for a rocket launch. It's a classic example of, we know the sun affects life here on Earth, obviously, but the timescales are just not the same. And what we see relative to environmental changes cannot be explained by sun burps, unfortunately, or the lack of sun burps.
All right. Well, the other question that I have for you, Brad, NASA scientists claim to have discovered a parallel universe where time moves backwards.
This is a comical one because not only is it a no, but no one really knows how the whole story started. I mean, yes, we do. But so firstly, the experiment was a telescope in Antarctica looking for neutrinos, these high energy particles. And what they found was particles kind of going the wrong direction. We expect them to coming from space, so coming from the top down. These appear to be coming from the bottom up, which doesn't really make sense. It's either that they've made it all the way through the Earth or they bounced off the ice or something. And so obviously it's an interesting result. Neutrinos are one of the more least understood particles in the particle family. And so obviously it requires some explanation. It could be how neutrinos move. There could be elements of new physics here that we don't know neutrinos. Now, obviously, one of the always out there ideas, and it's a legitimate one, is this could be a sign of higher level physics, what we call CPT violations, and something that could be a sign that there is the anti-universe, not necessarily parallel universe, right? The opposite pairs. And so that obviously led to anti-time, which obviously led to time running backwards, which obviously led to parallel universe, which led to the New York Post saying there's a parallel universe existing before us. Oh no.
Fantastic, Brad. Well, it is fun to pick apart the stories of the week with you. It is going to be a big week. We've talked about the headlines. We've talked about the stories. There's that one big story that we'll wrap up next week on Tuesday. Fingers crossed for an awesome Demo 2 launch and a successful docking at the space station.
That's right. And next Tuesday, we should be hopefully saying how it all went and how they're on board the space station. So we'll see how it goes, and it'll be an exciting Thursday morning here.
Fantastic, Brad. We'll catch you next Tuesday.
Take it easy.